To see everyone today. Nice to see you, Scano. Jody Nigasso, nice to see everyone. I'm Jody Harbor of Grandmother's Voice. It's a beautiful day, sunny, but still quite cold where I am. Nevertheless, it's a great time to have a conversation with these two awesome knowledge. I'm going to call you knowledge keepers, because anyone that cares for the earth like you two do, I think it's so important to acknowledge the people that carry this wisdom and really put it into practice, and then also do things like this where you're sharing this knowledge with others. So I'm really grateful to be in this space with Kevin Hamilton from McQuestion Urban Farm, and then Andrea Rowe of Halton Environmental Network. And is it Environmental Network? Okay. Yeah. Sometimes I mix that up.
Yep.
Right on. So it's really great to see everyone. Just before we get into introductions, I'd just like to acknowledge that our partnership here and our relationship that we're building is really about sharing knowledge and getting people to really start to respond and get into their earth around them, and work collectively to make change with the environment and help people do that. Because what we've discovered in these talks so far is that we know there's a lot of people that want to be a part of this, and so and make a change with the environment. So I'm grateful that we have started this conversation in this collective, and there are so many people that have been watching and encouraging us to keep these conversations going. So Nyawa for coming and being a part of this, and let's do a quick intro and get into the conversation today. I think we're talking about seed sovereignty, which is really important.
All right, I'll kick it off. So my name is Andrea Rowe, and I am the Director of Sustainable Environments for Halton Environmental Network. And that just means anytime a conversation comes up about greening our planet, greening the world around us, greening the spaces that we live and work in, I have to be part of that conversation, because it's just what motivates me to keep doing what I'm doing, which is to try and make a difference in our community. So I'm happy to join the conversation today with you, Jody and Kevin, and I'll turn it over to you for introductions.
Yeah, hello, I am Kevin Hamilton at McQuestion Urban Farm, and I will be registering my business name for my other farm soon. I just got the Earl, but funny thing, when we were looking at names and stuff like this, I was saying, I think Jody and I were discussing the resistance is fertile, in that, if we can green up the earth, that's a great act of, resistance to our normal culture out there, quote unquote normal. And when we typed that in on GoDaddy to search, the next day it was free. It was like $20 or whatever. And then the next day it was $2,000. So somebody like algorithms these things. So anyways, I'm not going to do the reveal of my business name yet. But I'm Kevin Hamilton. 21 years I've been farming organically. I always say this, it's not an ego thing or whatever, but rode my bicycle from Portugal to Vietnam, studying all these different systems of farming to figure out best practice. And yeah, I'm currently enrolled in the Elaine Ingham Soil Food Web, which is figuring out that every handful of soil has about 6 billion microorganisms in there, and getting biocomplete compost with all the right protozoa, nematodes, microarthropods, fungi, bacteria, and all that kind of stuff. And it is really an earth-saving revolution, in that we can get that microbial life back in our soils and get our soils productive and holding carbon, and really being able to terraform or transform the planet. So and I'm here to share all the information that I have in my brain. I guess that the topic today was going to be food sovereignty.
Food, seed, food. Hey, you guys are the ones that are talking, and there's a lot of us that are listening. So I know the conversations going and the circles get bigger and bigger and bigger. So yeah, start wherever you feel. You guys are the ones that know it.
I think we wanted to circle back to this because we'd been talking about food security, food sovereignty, and after last week's conversation, we came back to this topic about seed security and seed sovereignty. And so we just wanted to, I guess, reaffirm why these conversations are happening as part of the work that we're doing, both at the center at Country Heritage Park, the work that Kevin's doing, and some of the conversations that we've been having with community members around, I guess, the journey that everyone has gone through over the last couple of years with the pandemic and trying to get access to seeds. The climate is getting worse. And so how do we make sure that that we have the ability to grow our own food, that we have the ability to make choices about the seeds that we're using? How do we make sure that we're climate resilient with the seed choices and the food choices? So it's just part of that bigger conversation that we wanted to make sure that we circled back to, because people keep saying, you know, where do I get seeds? How do I start seeds? And so it's, yeah, Kevin, I'll hand it back over to you just to add any thoughts in about how we've circled back again to just try and talk about food sovereignty and what that means to us locally.
Sure. Like, I know one of my biggest pet peeves is when I go to these food security and sovereignty kind of go hand in hand in some regard. But whenever the ministry does something like this, or the cities, I always left shaking my head, because the first part of food security or sovereignty is having the seed. And I think the second part is being able to warehouse or have the storage capacity to save our food. As far as the sovereignty goes, it has been systematically and bit by bit chipped away from us. So like sovereignty is, I just kind of chalk up to, as far as terms of reference goes, autonomy. So having your own right to feed yourself and your own right to self-determination is a nice way to put it too. And that has slowly been eroded and taken away from us. In the early 2000s, Monsanto is a large chemical, pharmaceutical or agricultural company that makes Roundup, is their most famous thing. They also had Asian Orange, and have some of the biggest, I think about $2 billion in criminal lawsuits against them. And I won't go too down the road of the problems we've identified, but it's important to understand what our government and the corporations are doing to us, and ways that we can combat that. So Monsanto hired a strategist, analyst, a business modeling guy, and he said to them, "Where do you want to be in 20 years?" And they said that they want to have like 80% of the world's seed theirs. And there is a company called Seminis, which it was over 60% of the vegetables in our supermarkets are from their plant breeding programs and their seed breeding programs. So what Monsanto did is, instead of making like continuing on their 300 million or whatever they were making every year, they said, we want to be at this point in 20-25 years. So they started, instead of profiting 300 million or whatever they were doing, they profited very little, and they bought up every seed company they could. And they had a strategy to buy these companies up for above and beyond what they were worth at the time, knowing that they could monopolize. And the first thing they did was they fired all the plant breeders. They dropped all the least productive seed lines. And so I'm really seeing the effects of it this year. Going to the seed house yesterday, I went to William Dam. And so one of the things, our seed security in this country is very minimal. Like, we have like barley and oats and corn and soy and these kinds of seeds in Canada. Even then, a lot of the corn is genetically modified now. And so there's, you know, what's it called? Proprietary rights for that. TRIPS is the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the World Trade Organization, which is trade relation of intellectual property. So when they patent a seed, like, they break down the DNA and then they say, well, we own the patent to this seed now. So that goes along with corn. But long story short, we have the grains, seed supply, but we have very little in to-scale vegetable seed production in this country. So we're importing most of our seeds from Europe and America and Asia. And having said that, when I went to William Dam yesterday, and then I went to Stokes Online, and I went to all these other seed houses, and the one thing that I'm noticing across the board now, and this might have been like their plan in the next 25 years, is that you can't buy a regular open pollinated tomato, which is kind of the most basic thing that we grow. Everybody backyard gardener generally has a few tomato plants, and they're all hybridized. So when you have a hybrid seed, what that means in terms of legal speak is that it's a plant variety protection, PVP. And if I was to take that hybrid seed, that tomato, and save that seed from it, they could do a simple genetic test, come in, say you stole my genetics, this belongs to me, and then they can sue you. And they have sued many farmers, and they shut down a lot of the seed cleaning businesses because they would implicate them with illegal activity of saving farmers seeds and cleaning it and giving it back to them. So that's illegal in both rights, and there would be like hefty fines. And they had like trucks driving around, like big suburban black SUVs with tinted windows with like big dudes coming out and all this. And it's well documented. Long story short, you can't find these open pollinated varieties of seeds anymore. And the seeds, instead of having like a packet, which was like, 200 tomato seeds for $3 for the packet, now it's like $15.75 for 100 seeds. And the prices have gone really high. So, and in one tomato, you can have like 200-300 seeds if you take the time to save it. So that's, one way we can combat it is that if you have a nice healthy plant, pick your healthiest plants, pick your healthiest tomatoes, make sure you have some separation so there's not cross-pollinating, and then you can save that seed. And the physical act of saving seed we can get into later, but it's really basic and it's really easy to do. It's just taking that time. The other thing, and please jump in, anybody, or ask questions in the comments, because I'm going to be just sharing what I've observed. There's two other cases that are really important. There's a fellow named Michael Schmidt, and I visited him this past winter, and he has had his farm raided 3 times. He has been to court for years now. All these things get dragged out. So he got raided at gunpoint several times. They confiscated his equipment. They confiscated all his cheese. And he is a raw milk farmer. So he has customers that all become members of a cooperative that buy in, and they pay a member, and they come and they pick up. They own the cows. They own the equipment. And he is just merely an employee milking, making cheese, making raw milk for them. This is like, nobody's getting hurt. Nobody's ever gotten sick from his products. Nobody's ever gotten sick from milk for a long time in this country. They keep on, like every country in the world allows raw milk, and there's something within, if they want to put some kind of government regulation on it and all that, they can, but it makes up like less than 1% of consumption for milk. Anyways, they have taken him to court several times. He's been found guilty pretty much every time. The one time when he was found not guilty on like 16 counts, they appealed it, and then they got a judge that was more, leaning to corporations, and they sued him.
I'm sitting here shaking my head, Kevin, because I'm like, we could have a whole other show, every day of the week to talk about this. I'm reading a quote right here, way evil, okay, stuff that happens, out, when it comes to feeding the world and monopoly and like bureaucracy. And, it's just, it's horrible that this is happening with our food source. It just doesn't make sense to me. But Absolutely. It also, I sit here and know that, the reason why we created this was so that we can have these conversations, and people, if they're not understanding everything you're talking about, they're understanding that there's corrupt things involved in why this is why we have security issues, right? Because again, it's the systemic, problems, colonization still at its best right here that you're talking about, right? Like on every level. So I'm really glad. Little morsels like this, it just I think makes me a little angry, you know, but it also makes me more passionate about understanding how we can bring people into these conversations and figure out what's next.
Mm. Yeah, I was working with my co-op student this morning, and we were talking about all of these lovely seed catalogs that come and tempt us with new varieties, and just all of the glossy photos that get you excited. And I had to really, really, really resist the temptation to order more seeds this year, because I'm trying to take stock of what I already have and what might already be in the community that we can share and trade and pass back and forth, and just encourage that seed saving mentality, so that we're not feeding these corporate machines. As much as I love the smaller seed producers that are local, I don't mind that, but I'm really trying to resist the big orders that I used to place just out of sheer excitement and enthusiasm for doing it. I'm trying to show more restraint this year.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong, I think, with really focusing. And if anything, Terry Lynn Brandt, that Mohawk Seed Keepers that we're going to be working with this year,
Mhm.
They're important. I mean, telling us like focus, start somewhere. And as a garden, like, our indigenous garden here that we're starting to create, that's what's important to us, is like, don't give us too much. Like, let us just like start and really work at becoming good at, rejuvenating the soil, or, all of these good little tips that you've been sharing with us, Kevin and Andrea, from the beginning. So anyway, sorry to cut you off there, Kevin. Carry on with what you're sharing with us.
Sure. I'm just like looking here at a catalog, and like, for out of 30 or 40 varieties of tomatoes, like if you look in here, F1 is hybrid. So you can see there that says F1, 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 F1. They're all F1s, and which means F1 is a hybrid. So you can't really get the genetic purity of that seed. But anything that says heirloom is open pollinated. And open pollinated means that it hasn't been, tampered with or inbred, because they inbred these lines of tomatoes and stuff like that. Which is, I think we all understand inbreeding is not a good idea.
Well,
But more
yes.
importantly, too, it's nature doing its job to pollinate it. It's got that local adaptation to the seed where it has been successful growing in those conditions. So if we save those seeds, then the following year it's going to show that much more potential. Obviously, climate change tends to throw curveballs, but it is going to have a higher probability of being successful in those growing conditions than something that has been bred in a lab and seed distributed across the country, regardless of, if you're in Arizona versus Edmonton. Those are not the same growing conditions. We need things that are adapted to the local climate.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it'll have a predisposition to the genetic components of your soil. And even when we do have those big curveballs thrown at us, it's not all the better, but it's good in that when you have these curveballs, if you have a cucumber, tomato, eggplant, whatever, that survives and looks healthy, then that's the seed you want. And that's like going to give you stronger disease resistance, better climatic conditions for the highs and lows and all that. So yeah, that's what we want. So yeah, a lot of these, Monsanto was bought up by Bayer, 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 a German pharmaceutical company, and they now took them over. And I think they changed the name, just to hide it. But they own so much; it's ridiculous. So you used to be able to get lists of all the Monsanto seeds, and you could avoid buying those varieties to not support them. But they don't really make them available, and I think it's just because a massive chunk of the seed available is from them.
So support your local seed banks, share seeds, let people know if you have seeds to offer. We'll start our own resistance.
That's it. And I mean, we saved parsley seed last year on like maybe 10 or 15 plants. And I mean, I have more parsley seed than I would ever plant in my lifetime. Like, and that was just from one, and they dry it on the stalk and you just bang it into a bucket, and it was pretty clean seed. So it was ready to go. Yeah, it just takes a little bit. And I've been trying to do like 5 or 6 varieties every year and then stick them in the freezer where they will maintain like 80% germination viability for, as long as you're in the freezer.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask, when you had mentioned the rating the seeds or buying the seeds, like what about when you're out in the store shopping and you have to, right? We have to go buy our groceries. How do you know if it's an F1 or hybrid, or if it's like when you're purchasing that, grade A apples, organic? Like, is that like, we don't even know anymore? Or
so are you talking about the seed packets that are available in the store?
that too. I'm actually talking about that, or even this actual.
Oh, the actual
vegetable.
apple. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. You don't. They did a test a few years back to see, because they introduced genetically modified sweet corn, because prior to that it was just for animal feed or for processing into industrial products, like, and a lot of, like, when you see what's the other word for vitamin C? The other word for vitamin C is ascorbic acid. That's a genetically modified corn derivative. So, I mean, that's not a good thing to be putting in our bodies. We don't have a genetic predisposition to processing that. Long story short, Sobeys was the only grocery store that had non-genetically modified sweet corn. The rest of them had, followed suit out of. And, I mean, I can't blame farmers, because it's a hard job farming. And when you have a quick fix where you can spray glyphosate, Roundup ready stuff on the fields and get weed free, and it's easy, that's what they did. First, they were rejecting the technology, and then they embraced it because of the ease. And I guess, but they had to get bigger and bigger equipment. And anyways, and glyphosate, the Roundup stuff, when it originally came on the market, Monsanto said it had no residuals and it was biodegradable. 2 years later, when all the not-for-profits and the universities get funding to do their own studies, of course, the government rubber stamps it. Woohoo! They did the science, and then we prove that it is causing cell division in the soil, and it is persistent. And it's another word for cell division is kind of like cancer, tumors. So yeah, it's tough.
It's hard to hear, like, it's hard to listen, right? But I think that this is where the conversations have to begin. If we're talking about, and I'm just gonna take this somewhere else. So we're talking about healing this world right now, right? And every conversation that I have with healers, community, people that are coming into our center here, phone calls we're getting, like, we want to heal. We can't surface heal anymore. There's no such thing, right, as that. We need to get to the core, to the seed. Why? And if we're talking about all of this colonize, like people like us that want to do the deep dive, let's get down to it. Let's have that understanding. And it's time to understand where it starts. And I love what you're sharing, you guys, because someone like me, who I always say, I don't know anything. I know how to give love to a tree or a plant that's growing. But this is really good information, because I really, to me, visually, I feel like I see where we are in the world today, and where we need to really go from 0 to 90.
Yeah.
And we'll learn alongside each other.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the original problem, is that we've become disconnected with the land. We've been, the Industrial Revolution has brought us many wonderful things, but it congregated people in cities with a faster pace of life and shortcuts. And so how many of us do know how to grow our own food anymore? So that's why education is a huge component of what we're trying to do in the community. And I'm still on a learning journey. So I'm excited to partner with Grandmother's Voice and the learning gardens and the healing gardens, because I'm not the expert, but if I can learn something and then share that knowledge and pass it along, that's part of my healing journey. That's part of, who knows the ripple effect of the conversations that we're going to have and the impact.
Yeah. And if I could also impart right now in this conversation, the importance of understanding Indigenous ways is that we've been having way too much. We have way too much. So, how can we really take a step back and go, what do we really need? So speaking about how society, and I keep saying colonization, westernization, because that's what really took us, like, threw us forward, saying, hey, this is how we should be, industrialize everything in our world. And indigenous people, right, are like, no, 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 no. That's not how we live. So let's step back, drink more water, okay, reflect on what we're putting in our bodies. What do we really need in our bodies, and what's causing cancer? Like, we had a lot of conversations to talk about here. And so I just want to thanks to our I don't know, you guys watching our little conversation.
Yeah, the commentator.
These conversations do need to happen. And the reality is, yes, we're living in a time where we're waking up to the fact that we've all been colonized. We've all been westernized. We've all been following, the leaders of this world telling us how we're supposed to live. And it hasn't been healthy for anybody. So to understand that, we have to go right to the seed, the heart of it. I know before we leave this conversation, there are a few announcements that I think are really important. So I don't know how much more you guys are talking about this topic. So I just want to be mindful that I just want, I don't know if we've extended this time. I was off for a couple of weeks. So
I think a few more minutes certainly won't hurt. I think we could talk about this topic all day, but you're right. We should focus maybe for the next few minutes on just what else is going on around us that maybe people can participate in or get involved in or become aware of. So,
yeah, really quickly, just to finish that. I mean, I'll just say it really quick. In 2006, they quietly passed a law that you can't slaughter an animal, on a temperature appropriate day on your farm and share that meat with, say, the sheriff and the CEO of the hospital and the mayor and all that kind of stuff. You can only eat that meat on the farm with your family and anybody you invite over. It used to be that you could do that and you could give it away for free as long as there was no money exchange. But systematically over the last 20 years, they have shut down all the abattoirs it's in the guise of safety and over the top regulations to keep the meat safe. But what they have done in effect is taken our rights away to slaughter, butcher an animal that's totally healthy. And the MNR has staked out people that are doing it for like weeks. And there was a guy, an Army general, who had a university degree in toxicology and had been butchering, knee-high to a grasshopper beside his father, learning how to butcher from him, and doing it with stainless steel stuff in his garage. And people got arrested and all this kind of stuff. And then they dropped the charges because they knew that if it went to court, they were going to lose bad. Anyways, long story short, Michael Schmidt had his farm raided again, the raw milk guy, for, it becomes a charter of rights and freedoms. And what we have, freedom of individual of choice, in that if I want to consume raw milk, if I want to consume fermented meat, that might sound weird to somebody, and I know what I'm getting into and I willingly do it, we should be allowed that. We should be able to butcher our own chickens and stuff like that and give them to neighbors and share. And the one guy that got arrested, they had bought pigs together and then soldered them in on a temperature appropriate date, all that, followed all the rules to be safe because they don't want to get sick. And they should be able to take that meat off the farm and share it. So having said that, I know Michael Schmidt, and I'll keep people updated too. You can direct message me through McQuestion Urban Farm. But when Michael Schmidt's case comes to court, we need 100,000 people to show up at Queen's Park or wherever it is to say enough is enough, because he will most likely get found guilty for a third time. And he's putting himself on the line for us and our right to our own self-determination to be able to feed ourselves.
Wow. And this is a good kind of segue to be like, okay, so Kevin, provide us with these other groups and how to stay in touch. And that's what this collaborative was about, was, because Grandmother's Voice has been about really amplifying Indigenous ways, right? The people who are in urban Indigenous people who have not had connection with their, their ancestry or, but just knowing that we have a place in society right now, and how do we get caught up and how do we get involved in our own, environment, not even just environment, but cultural community, and be a part of these conversations. It's so important that we I guess are brought into the conversations and knowing that we can make change. So I wanted to, before we leave, mention, sorry, there's a lot of conversation happening in the kitchen, and I was trying to be nice about it, but anyway, this conversation is carrying on in there because they're hearing like, oh my gosh, this is real life stuff that we're trying to understand. So where we are right now, when I met you, Kevin, was when we acquired this space here at Country Heritage Park in Milton. And the first time ever that we were invited as urban Indigenous people to say, hey, we want to support you, and bringing yourself together and having a space to learn about this. And we could have planted and we could have, right away done something, but, I'm so grateful that Andrea was there right by my side, our side at the beginning, saying, hey, let's look at this and how can we create this and make this a sustainable project, right? And for the community. And so that's what led me to you, Kevin. And everything that we do here with Grandmother's Voice is guided by spirit. It's guided by culture. It's guided by each other. And so, and I met you, and the day I met you and Amy from McQuestion, remember, I was just like, hey, like, I want to know more, what's going on. And so there was some really amazing news that I saw. And I don't know if we're allowed to talk about, but I saw it in the newspaper. So I guess we can talk about, especially, these are the conversations for it. But I love the fact that, what you're doing over there and the Indigenous community. And I was really inspired when I met you and Amy and then saw all the programming around there. So do you want to just take a couple minutes and talk, or a minute and talk about that? Because I think it's so important to take this opportunity to invite community members in and let them know that there's a space for us to learn and grow together.
For sure. On our Facebook page, which is McQuestion Urban Farm, you can find us and we'll announce all the stuff we're doing. We do have a seedling sale coming up, which check it out on our website too, McQuestion Urban Farm. And then we do have volunteer slots, times available all season long. They're Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays. You just have to kind of sign your name and sign up that way. And then we are going to be running workshops and stuff as well throughout the season. We're going through a transition phase where Nowasa is taking the lead for McQuestion Farm, which is great news. So once we flesh out some fine tunings and details, we'll be able to advertise our workshops and stuff like that. And I'm planning on doing workshops as well, outside of McQuestion, in regards to these more food security. Like, how many people out there know how to butcher a chicken and get it ready for your dinner table, that kind of stuff. And I mean, those are things that have been lost on purpose, it would seem, from a global corporate food structure that does not want us to have that sovereignty over food security. So as much, and then seed saving and all that kind of stuff. And if you check out, we'll be advertising all our lists of workshops for these talks too, and encourage everybody to share what we're doing here. So McQuestion Urban Farm is a good place to find out stuff. And then also I'll let you speak to that, Andrea.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you were passing over to me.
Oh, just I was just saying, check us out at McQuestion Urban Farm. And then I'm not sure you guys have an Earth Day, which Vandana Shiva is one of my huge heroes, like one of my favorite humans on this planet. She puts these big, complex economic trade relations and all these sanctions and stuff into the most layman's terms. And she's an amazing, amazing human.
Yes.
So we can all understand.
Yeah, she is. So we're hosting a movie night for Earth Day, and I was hoping to have the exact details to be able to share for today, but I don't. So I'm not sure if it's on the Wednesday evening, which is when we typically do our movie nights, or if it's on Earth Day, the Friday. But again, I will post details. And the movie is The Seeds of Vandana Shiva. So she is a woman from the Himalayas who is a brilliant, brilliant scientist, but she has taken on seed security and seed sovereignty as one of her passion goals in life, and travels around the world advocating for people's rights to own the seeds, because whoever controls the seeds controls the people. And people have a right to be able to grow their own food and to feed themselves with culturally appropriate, climate resilient seed sources. So I thought it was a perfect connection to our topic today. So I'm sorry I don't have exact details, but we will have that announcement coming soon on our website, which is haltonenvironment.ca, or if you want to look us up. And it will be in association with the Oakville Film Festival, so OFA, if anyone is familiar with them. And
Beautiful.
hopefully you will join us for that movie and conversation, because that's the important part, is to not only watch the movie, but then to talk about it and figure out, okay, what does this mean to us locally? What do we need to do? How can we advocate for this in our own lives?
If folks can use the public library system, Vandana Shiva has amazing books that are like all about the colonization of our cultures and food and everything. And they're like 180 pages. They're kind of easy reads. And again, she puts things into layman's terms that we can all understand. And the bovine, if people remember the bovine, that is where you can find out about all these ridiculous charges against farmers for trying to feed friends and family and the communities. So that's they just had a new posting about the latest on that Michael Schmidt raw farm that was in November 21st, was in court. So there's more court dates to come.
I love these conversations. I don't mean to be controversial. A couple of my friends I used to play baseball with, best softball back in the day, actually called me controversy girl. So
Compliment.
I don't mean to, but these conversations are so important, and it's not about controversial. It's about rights. It's about knowing our history. And if we're talking about, equity, diversity, inclusion, colonization, all of this stuff, then we need to start at the root of it. And this is so important. And I'm so glad that we're having these conversations, because I think there are so many people who are waking up. That's what the elders are saying. The people are saying we're awakening to really living in, that's what COVID did, is it woke us up, and made us look at how did we get here today? And then let's look at our ancestry and how we were, think about it. Andrew, you just said, what we deserve, what the right to plant in our gardens. Well, let's think about how the lands in Canada and this nation was taken away from Indigenous people because they were farming, or there's a huge understanding. So it's like, we can spend a lot of time trying to learn, or we can get into action. And so that's what I'm really happy that we created this, because that's exactly what this is about. Getting into action, show up. You have 3 organizations here that, exist because of volunteers, because of passion, because of necessity. And the conversation can be open to you. So before we say goodbye, or not goodbye, but see ya. And next week, there's so much happening. And because we're nonprofits and just community organizations, you're looking at the people that make a lot of the things happen in these organizations. So we're starting to get our connections on our social medias, and you can find it, we're becoming better at Instagram and Facebook and sharing all of that, and, cross-pollinating our content. So, feel free to reach out to us. And I do know that we do have quite a few northern communities that watch us and comment and are, I think, intrigued by this conversation. So if anyone in the northern communities that are involved in what we talk about, please message either one of us at our organizations, and we'll get you involved in these conversations. And it's really important to hear what you're dealing with in your area. And then also, I did have someone reach out to Grandmother's Voice and inquire if we were connected with any women's organizations in the northern communities and surrounding communities that are dealing with or work around food sovereignty. And so we know that through government funding and other opportunities that we can support that. So if there's anyone listening or you know of anyone, if you can reach out, let us know. We have a couple of contacts who are looking for ways to support those groups. And so this is what this collective is all about, right? Is networking, connecting with each other. So if anyone has any ideas or would like to hear anything or reach out again, watch. And then one more big announcement: Grandmother's Voice is hosting with our Country Heritage Park here, Isaac Murdoch, on Monday and Wednesday next week. Sorry. So April 4th and April 6th, Isaac Murdoch is coming here with one of his guests, partners to speak about the revolution of the heart. And this, I know I've been following, and if you have been following Isaac for quite some time, he's talked about this time and the change that we're in, and how to move from our beliefs, what society has created, to really living from our heart. And so I invite everyone to come to Country Heritage Park next week, Monday and Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. to hear him speak. There's a lot of space here, and we hope to see you all. And I look forward to our conversation next week. Does anyone have to add anything before we sign off? I know I just dropped a lot there.
I always have something to add, but
I know. I love it.
Roots to Harvest is in Thunder Bay based organization, and they are looking for a food literacy expansion, Indigenous food animator, and so they are prioritizing an Indigenous lead on that, and they are a great organization that's in Thunder Bay. Check them out for anybody looking into that. There's one other thing. Lost.
You want to put that in the comments there, Kevin?
Sure. I don't know how to. I think I need to be logged into Facebook to do that.
I can do that.
Yep. Say it again, and we'll post it for you.
The organization is Roots to Harvest.
Oh, okay.
They're real.
I like that name.
Yeah, they're a great organization.
Thunder Bay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nyawa. And thank you to everyone who continues to tune in and support this. We're really looking forward to how this grows and how we grow together this year.
Mm-hmm. Thank you once again, Jody, for hosting.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll see everybody next week. And let's spread the word.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Take care.
Yeah, Anna.
I was gonna say that.